That better? Okay,
Yes.
good. Good evening. I'd like to report that the council met in closed session tonight with council to discuss one piece of anticipated litigation. All council members except for Councilmember Mendoza were present, and I have no reportable action. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening and welcome to the January 18th, 2023 meeting of the Roseville City Council. I want to ask the clerk to call the roll.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Bernasconi?
Here.
Councilmember Albert?
Here.
Councilmember Mendoza? Councilmember Mendoza is on his way. Councilmember Rakucci?
Here.
And Mayor Haldeshell.
Here.
Thank you.
And I'd like to ask Nick Alexander to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Nick's son is stationed where, Nick?
San Diego. He's an ensign in the U.S. Navy, and I've been coming to these proceedings for 32 years. It's the first time I've led the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Alexander. Right. I'm going to ask our clerk to announce the meeting procedures.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 18th City of Roseville Regular City Council meeting. If you're present here tonight with us, thank you for being here. And if you've not picked up an agenda, please help yourself. They're located at the end of the staff table to your left. As a reminder, the Brown Act does prohibit our City Council from engaging in discussions with the public, and it will not be discussing any action that is not listed on tonight's agenda. For public comments, each speaker will be provided with 3 minutes on non-agenda items and will be given 5 minutes for agendized items. The maximum allotted time for public comment is 25 minutes. Time will be monitored, and once the red light begins to blink at the podium, we request that you please conclude your comments. Lastly, if you address our City Council tonight, please consider stating your name for the record. With that, thank you for joining us tonight and for your civic participation.
Great. Thank you very much, Carmen. We'll start the evening with presentations, and the first presentation. Oh, I thought I was thanking you, Carmen. All right. Before we do presentations, with the permission of my colleagues and the input from my colleagues, I'd like to make a statement and make some recognition and appreciation. So over the last month, California's been deluged with a relentless series of storms, but due to the leadership of those who sat in these chairs before us and the dedication of Roseville employees, our businesses and citizens have been fortunate to avoid the flooding and widespread and lengthy power outages experienced in surrounding areas in the region. Each of us on the council has witnessed firsthand or seen on social media pictures of flash flooding from the Saturday storm that brought up to an inch of rain in an hour, temporarily inundating our trails and floodplain and open space. But then, nearly as quickly, water passed through our system as those systems were designed. And we've seen the property damage and downed trees from gale force winds have generated and continue to this day. But through it all, our dedicated employees rose to the challenge. In dangerous and unpredictable conditions, the employees of Roseville Electric kept the power on and quickly procured a crane tall enough to stabilize a 175-foot tree that threatened property and our electric grid in the downtown. Our wastewater and water utilities worked as a team when the volume of calls required a response. Our public safety team at Roseville Fire and Roseville PD braved the conditions. I know they're trained, but those conditions were unpredictable out there, to ensure the public was safe. Our parks, recreation, and libraries staffed the sandbag operation. Our public affairs professionals and countless other Roseville employees embodied our mission statement of delivering exceptional services to maintain a safe and healthy community. This isn't the first time, and it won't be the last time that our employees rose to the occasion. In 2021, after the city navigated through the first year of the evolving COVID-19 protocols, a challenge coin was issued to Roseville employees. The coin reads in part, quote, adaptable and agile, end quote, quote, make quality decisions, end quote, and focus on the people. These are some of the exemplary values and ethics demonstrated by Roseville employees, not just in emergency and unexpected situations like we've just experienced, but every day. And as someone said to me recently, Roseville's a lovely city to live in, and I couldn't agree more. And each of us can proudly and humbly say, we are Roseville. And I know my colleagues have witnessed many things, and I'd like to open it up, starting with Councilman Alvord, if you have any other comments.
I've been very impressed listening to friends that live in other cities and other areas, having my power on, having the streets clear, drove down Baseline. One side of the road, there was no flooding. The other side of the road was flooded all over the place. It really stood out. Our city stands out.
Vice Mayor Bernasconi?
You said it well. Thank you.
All right. Councilwoman Ricucci?
Just a comment. I was at a strategic workshop in Sacramento with Northern California Power Agency, and one of the guest speakers was Paul Lau from SMUD. And after he spoke, I hadn't met him before, and I got introduced to him. And I was with our electric utility director, and he was very forthright and said how he's thankful with City of Roseville, how when they had literally thousands of outages that just happened really quickly, that Roseville helped step up to the plate and was tremendous help for his community. So I wanted to pass that on. Not only are we helping our people, but making sure that people around us get help too.
And I would be remiss to not recognize that, my thought, the reason why I generated this recognition and appreciation statement was a conversation I had with Nicole Lois in Roseville Electric, whose husband's a firefighter, who said, I know he's trained, but I don't know what the conditions out there he might face and what unexpectedly might occur. And, I was talking to Councilman Mendoza, and he said, we really do need, and I know this is reflected by all of the members on the council, we really do appreciate the work that happened and the work that's going to continue. There's potholes, there's trees that don't even take a wind, just take a whisper now to blow over. So thank you very much on behalf. I think it's really important that the council recognizes your work. Those of you who are in the room and those of you, please extend it to your colleagues. So thank you very much. And with that, we'll now head to Agenda 5.1, the Roseville Chamber of Commerce splash proceeds. And Rana Godbon. And
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. We're honored to be here today. I'm Rana Godbon, CEO of the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce, and I have here with me our co-chairs for the splash event, Ann Carpenter and Scott Marchetti, as well as our event coordinator for the Chamber, Megan Trent. We're very pleased to carry on the tradition for 26 years and execute Splash. It was my first year executing Splash as a Chamber CEO. But I'm very pleased to say that we have had over 30 restaurants, 10 breweries, and 14 wineries that attended. And it is, we sold out the fastest this year. The event sold out in July while it was held in September. And we had over 1,250 people in attendance, bringing the Roseville community together, from our elected leaders to our community leader to our business community and to our residents. And we are honored on behalf of the Chamber Board, the Chamber membership, to be able to present to the City of Roseville Parks, Rec, and Library Department for their at-risk youth programs a check in the amount of $20,000 to the city of Roseville. So thank you so much for your support, for your partnership. We are looking forward to just carrying that tradition for many years to come.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Accepting the check on behalf of the department is also Scott Marchetti, who represents the City of Roseville Parks and Rec Department. Scott, do you want to say a few words?
I want to say thank you on behalf of the City of Roseville Parks, Recreation, and Libraries Department, to the Roseville Area Chamber of Commerce for your continued partnership and support of our youth programs. So thank you.
And do you want to come around and get a picture
Yeah,
with a
let's do
check?
that in
Yeah.
front.
And do you want us to
Why don't
stand
we
up and
Can we
then?
stand in front of City Council and we have the City Council in the back and then?
Yeah.
Does that,
Do the check.
does that work?
Is
Let's
that
do it.
okay? Or do we do it on this side?
This way, stand here, present the check. And Carpenter. Are we all in the?
Pauline, one more over.
One more over, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Always good to start on a positive note. Next will be public comments. This is an opportunity for those who would like to make public comments on items that are not appearing on the agenda. Do we have anyone in the audience who would like to make? Yes, please come forward.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Matt Kelly. I'm a field representative for the NorCal Carpenters Union out of Local 46 in Sacramento, and I cover Placer County. We have hundreds of members in the city of Roseville alone, and I'm just here today to talk to you about our core values. NorCal Carpenters Union, we have a few core values, one of them being a livable wage, often a prevailing wage. We all know how much it costs to live these days, and we truly believe that the men and women that are building this community, building the projects, the homes you live in, the buildings that you do business in, things like that, deserve to be able to afford to live around where they're working. I bought a house back in June. I know very much how much houses cost these days, and $25 an hour probably not going to buy you a house. Another thing is healthcare. The men and women building these projects often get hurt. They don't have any health care. If they have health care, that'll take care of them. The government won't be paying workman's comp, things like that. And it should be family health care. They shouldn't have to worry about if their child falls and breaks a bone or something like that, going broke for it. They should have the health care to support that. Lastly is going to be local hire. It's about making sure that people who live around here build the projects that are built around here. It's not somebody driving from hours away that comes in, makes this money, takes it out of this community so you guys don't generate any of the revenue from them spending it. You know, people should have the right to be able to work close enough to home where they can make it to their daughter's dance recitals, their kids' baseball games, things like that. These are all simple things. You as a council have the power to empower these workers that aren't represented, to let developers come into this area and know that you're not going to accept them hiring general contractors that, I mean, quite simply commit crimes. Tax fraud is a crime. They pay these workers under the table. All it does is hurt the community. If you guys could do this, then it would instore pride in these people, and you could be proud as a council that you helped the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for your comments. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no other comments on items not on the agenda, I want to ask the clerk to announce the procedures for the consent calendar.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. All matters on consent are considered routine in nature and will be passed and approved by one motion of the City Council. There will be no discussion on consent calendar items unless a member of the public, council, or staff requested an item be pulled for further discussion. At this time, no member of the staff or City Council have requested such item be removed. Is there any member of the public that would like to pull an item for further discussion? Seeing none, Mr. Mayor, we do have for your approval of yourself and the council items 7.1 through 7.31 on consent. If I can get a motion to approve? So moved. Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Councilmember Elverd.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza. Sorry, and he's on his way. He'll be excused. Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Haudashelt.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is resolutions, and agenda item 8.1, the 2022 Pro Housing Incentive Program application. And with us tonight are our housing manager, Trish Isom, and Lauren Hawker.
Good evening, Mayor Haudashelt and Council. As you mentioned, I'm Tricia Isom, and I have with me Lauren Hawker. And tonight we're going to be doing a quick presentation on our Pro Housing Incentive Pilot Program, and Lauren's going to start it for us.
Sorry, Trish, is your microphone on, or? Okay.
I'll talk louder.
So if we can move on to the next slide. So before Tricia talks about the grant money we're talking about, I just wanted to give a little background on Pro Housing Designation. So the program for Pro Housing Designation was established in 2019, actually as part of the Budget Act to help meet California's housing goals. It's given to cities demonstrating strong policy commitments to support housing production. We were awarded our designation pretty recently, just in December 15th, so last month. And at this time, Roseville is one of only 7 jurisdictions in the state to have received the award. The application requirements were extremely detailed and robust, and Jessica Lynch, the planner who prepared our application, deserves a lot of credit for our success. Fundamentally, what our application demonstrated was that Roseville's processes and programs are transparent, efficient, streamlined, and housing supportive. So the designation makes affordable housing projects more competitive for state and federal funding and could help accelerate the timeline for future projects. So we have multiple applications in right now totaling more than 1,000 units that now have a significant edge on any grant and tax credit applications that they make. And the Pros Housing Incentive Pilot Program that Tricia will be talking about is a new opportunity made available just recently, and it's only available to jurisdictions that have pro-housing designation.
Yes. So the California Department of Housing and Community Development released a notice of funding availability for the Pro Housing Incentive Pilot Program, we're calling it the PIP program, in December of 2022. As Lauren mentioned, the program is designed to reward local governments that have received the Pro Housing designation. Jurisdictions that receive the designation are now eligible to apply for additional funding, which will accelerate affordable housing production as well as preservation. Application materials must be submitted no later than March 15th, 2023, but the state is encouraging early applications, so my goal is to be able to submit for these new funds as soon as possible. Program award amounts are determined by jurisdiction population, as well as our Pro Housing Designation application score. The City of Roseville application will request the maximum award amount totaling $1,610,000. If awarded, the funds will be leveraged to develop multifamily rental housing that is affordable to low-income households. Staff recommends that City Council adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager or his designee to execute the necessary application, the standard agreement, and any other relevant documents for the Pro Housing Incentive Pilot Program. This concludes our presentation, and we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilwoman Rakucci, any questions?
No questions at this time. Thank you.
Welcome, Councilman Albert, from your meeting. Thanks. Do you have any questions?
No questions, thank you.
All right. Councilman Albert,
No comments, but congrats.
Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
No other questions.
Right. I really, this item was on consent, but because the award happened on December 15th, and because Roseville is so housing forward, right, I really felt like it needed this, needed not to be buried in the consent and needed a spotlight on it. 46, what's the ranking? What's the maximum that we could receive? And a subsequent question is, would we have gotten additional points if we were part of a regional application?
So applications are jurisdiction specific, so it would need to, all applications are jurisdiction by jurisdiction rather than regional in terms of the pro housing designation itself. So Roseville got 46 points on its pro housing designation. You need at least 30 to be designated. technically, the program has points up to 138 points. But it's not, the program isn't designed with the expectation that anyone would get 138. It's more like a very large menu, recognizing there are a lot of different types of policies and programs. So we fell right in the center in terms of the 7 jurisdictions who have pro-housing designation. We're right in the middle in terms of the amount of points that we were awarded. So I think West Sacramento got 56 points, for instance.
Great. All right, well, I'll open it up for public comment if there's any public comment on this item. Seeing none, I'll close public comment, inquire if there are any additional questions from the council on the presentation. Not,
No,
clerk,
just keep
would
us
you,
posted.
Yes.
would you read the motion?
Thank you. So at this time, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution Number 23-011, authorizing the application for and receipt of pro-housing incentive pilot program funds. If I can get a motion to approve?
So move.
Yeah,
Second?
thank you. We have a motion on the floor with the second. We'll start off with our roll call with Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes, thank you very much for your presentation. Our next item is under special request reports and presentations, and it is the council discretionary funds downtown Roseville partnership.
Thank you. So we did receive a request to have the City Council consider a request for $2,000 from the council discretionary funds for the Downtown Roseville Partnership 61st Annual Sylvia Besana Holiday Parade that was held on Saturday, November 19th, 2022. And I understand Ms. Stephanie Hill is here tonight, if there are any questions on that.
Well, we'll open up for public comment. Stephanie, do you want to?
And the rest of the city council. It's been a long time coming to come in and make this presentation through a comedy of scheduling conflicts, but most of you guys were actually at the parade, and I appreciate you guys coming down and celebrating with us. There were 4,000 visitors to our downtown area, 50 parade floats, and actually we were able to fill the vendor square this year in Vernon Street, and people hung out in downtown Roseville till after 2 o'clock, so it was a great opportunity for people to really see what downtown offers. So although the parade has already been taking place, we did actually pretty much believe that you guys were going to sponsor, so we went ahead and used all of your information as a sponsor on the event. So you guys got all the benefits from that, and I would just like to request the $2,000 sponsorship. Any questions?
Right. Any other members of the public want to comment on this?
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. If not, I'll close public comment, inquire if the council has what the council's direction or questions might be.
I would just like to add that it makes it easier for us. I know there's set scheduling conflicts, but I think it puts us in a little bit of a difficult position months after the event. If there's a way that we know that these events are going to happen, if we can get them months in advance so that we can also plan out what our council discretionary fund has in it as well. I know we don't have very much to play with, and we want to be able to support those that come our way, but I just have concerns, I mentioned before, about setting a precedence with, things that are after the fact. So I believe something happened in November or to make this not happen, but even if they were to come with months before, that helps us.
That's correct, Vice Mayor. There was a meeting that was rescheduled. We missed a meeting, and then there were some meeting conflicts on their side where they couldn't make it. But noted, and we do try to make sure requests come in prior to the events. There are some one-offs though that come in after.
All right.
Yep, we were originally scheduled to come in November, but unfortunately there wasn't a quorum that night, so, yeah.
And you put the request in when?
October. But I do understand, probably August this year.
Right.
Just so we can make sure we cover all of that, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Oh, sir.
Great. Then I'll ask the clerk to read the motion.
Thank you. So the motion for consideration is that the City Council approve the $2,000 from the council discretionary funds to support the Downey Roseville Partnership 61st Annual Sylvia Besana Holiday Parade. If I can get a motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Bercucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Haudashelt.
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes.
Right. Our next item is Development Impact Fee Reports for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2022. And this is an informational-only item. Mr. Kaufman, we'll have your presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Haudashelt and City Council members. I'm Dennis Kaufman, Assistant City Manager and Chief Financial Officer. And this item tonight is an annual report required by the state law. The Mitigation Fee Act was passed by the legislature as AB 1600, which is known as, and it requires an annual report of the city's development impact fees. These fees are charged by local government agencies in connection with approval of development projects. A nexus study is prepared that identifies the projects that are required by development, the costs of those projects, and then sets appropriate fees to fund those projects. The purpose of the fees is to defray all or a portion of the costs of these projects that are typically public facilities related to the development project. In Roseville, development impact fees are generally charged at the time of a building permit is issued for the purpose of mitigating the impacts caused by new development on the city's infrastructure. Fees are collected and used to finance acquisition, construction, or improvement of public facilities that are needed as a result of new development. And this slide provides an example of some of the fees in the city's Development Impact Fee Report. The Mitigation Fee Act requires any local agency that imposes development impact fees to prepare this annual report providing specific information about our fees. In the report, for each account or fund, we have 180 days after the fiscal year to make this information available to the public. And these reporting requirements include a brief description of the type of the fee, the amount of the fee, the beginning and ending balance of the account or fund, the amount of the fees collected, how much interest was earned, and an identification of the public improvements that are funded with the fee. And we made this report available on the city webpage back in December to meet the reporting requirement. And as the mayor indicated, this is an information item. No council action is required. But I'm available to answer any questions.
Any questions from the council at this point in time? I'll open up for public comment. Seeing no public comment, I'll close public comment and inquire if the council has any additional questions. And since this is for information only, no actions required. Next item up is 9.3, fiscal year 2021-2022 end year report and FY 2022-23 budget adjustment. And Scott Pettingill will be making our presentation.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. I'm Dennis Kaufman, ACM and CFO.
Scott, okay.
And with me tonight is Scott Pettingill, the city's Assistant Finance Director. This agenda item includes our fiscal year 22 year-end report as well as a recommended budget adjustment. I'm going to provide a brief overview, and then Scott will present the information that's in the year-end report about the general fund, our enterprise funds, and some of our other development fee funds. And then I'll conclude with information that's in the recommended budget adjustment. But I wanted to briefly just kind of introduce this. This is for the fiscal year that started July 1st of 2021 and ended on June 30th of 2022. This is our year-end budget report that provides the year-end budgetary surplus. We also provide to the City Council an annual comprehensive financial report that includes the city's audited financial statements, and those will be coming to you probably in March of this year. The focus of this year-end budgetary report, again, is on the budgetary results of the general fund, the major enterprise funds, and some of our development funds. And as I indicated after Scott's presentation, I'll provide the details that are in the recommended budget adjustment. But with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thank you, Dennis. I'm going to begin with an overview of our 22 general fund operating results. So overall, the general fund ended fiscal year 22 with about $31.5 million in the surplus, consisting of approximately $29 million in revenues received above budget and $2.8 million in expenditure savings. The primary factors that contributed to these positive results were stronger than anticipated sales and property tax and salary savings due to vacant positions. The net result is a $31.5 million one-time increase in our general fund balance. This next slide provides an overview of our general fund revenue sources and the factors contributing to the $29 million in positive revenue results. Bradley Burns and Measure B sales tax revenues exceeded estimates by about $11.2 and $7.2 million, respectively. Similar to fiscal year 21, these positive results were primarily due to two factors. First, the 22 budget was developed in the spring of 21 when there was still a lot of uncertainty related to the impacts of the pandemic on our economy. And second, sales tax revenue growth was stronger than anticipated locally and across the state, primarily driven by inflation and strong economic activity in general retail, food products, transportation, construction sectors, and internet sales. And this growth was also partly due to federal stimulus funds that were distributed to households. Property tax revenues exceeded estimates by about $2.9 million, and this tax exceeded estimates due to rising property values as well as ongoing development activity. Parks, Recreation, and Library program revenues ended the year approximately $500,000 below estimates. 22 was a rebuilding year for the department, with COVID pandemic impacts affecting the first and second quarters of the year. Revenue trended below estimates throughout the year, but PRL continued to see improvements in program participation. The department offset this revenue shortfall with expenditure savings from materials, services, supplies, and vacant positions. Lastly, other revenue exceeded estimates by approximately $7.9 million due to hotel tax, or TOT, at $1.9 million, building permits at $1.2 million, and the property transfer tax at $1.2 million. And these results were offset by lower than anticipated building inspection fees and transfers. So this slide is similar to the last slide, but also provides some additional information on the general fund operating revenue results, including the amended budget and the total actual revenues received. The variance between our revenue budget and revenue actuals is circled in red on the slide. And you can see from the slide that sales tax revenues, including both Bradley Burns and Measure B, is the largest general fund revenue source, followed by property tax. These three revenue streams combined realized the most significant positive revenue results in fiscal year 22. And overall, general fund operating revenues ended the year about 16% above estimates. Moving on to general fund expenditures. This slide provides year-end expenditure results by department. All the general fund departments ended the year under budget due to salary savings from vacant positions as well as material, service, and supply savings. Overall, the departments expended approximately 98% of their budgets, resulting in expenditure savings about $2.8 million after taking into account encumbrances related to service agreements that are planned to be expended in a future year. I also wanted to note that the general government category, which is the top line of this chart, includes the support departments, which includes City Council, City Manager's Office, City Attorney's Office, City Clerk, Finance, Public Affairs, and Communications, and the Human Resources Department. Parks, Recreation, and Library, positive expenditure results of $1.3 million due to the pandemic impacts on programming offset their revenue shortfall of $500,000, which I mentioned previously. So I'll now move on to the enterprise funds. Operating revenues in the electric fund and the environmental utility funds, water, wastewater, and waste services, ended the year above estimates. Transit and transportation ended the year under estimates by about $600,000 and $200,000 respectively. And the youth development fund ended the year approximately $1.3 million under estimates due to the impacts of COVID-19 on Adventure Club programming. On the following slides, I'm going to go into a little more details about each of these variances. The electric fund exceeded estimates by about $18.4 million. And these positive results are attributed to increased retail sales that exceeded estimates by about $9.6 million. The primary factors contributing to this variance were warmer than average temperatures, which resulted in $2.7 million in additional revenues, and $5.1 million in related to in hydroelectric surcharges. Unbudgeted wholesale and California Rearage Payment Program, or CAP, revenues ended the year $2 million combined. And unbudgeted state reimbursements for 2 state-funded generators totaled $4.4 million. And other operating revenues, including mutual aid, state reimbursements, and fee revenues, ended the year about $2.4 million above estimates. All the EU funds revenues exceeded their ended the year above their estimates. The water fund ended the year at 4%, or $1.5 million above estimates, and the waste service fund ended the year 16%, or $5.5 million above estimates. These results are largely due to increased customer consumption and new development. The wastewater fund ended the year on target at $48.8 million in revenues. EU plans on setting aside net positive revenue results for rehab projects, fleet electrification, and the future utility operations center. And EU plans on taking a budget adjustment to set these revenues aside in the next couple of months. Transit fund revenues ended the year under estimates by $600,000 due to decreased demand for transit services. And this shortfall is primarily due to state and federal reimbursements, which reflected lower than anticipated contract and fuel expenditures associated with transit ridership reductions. Similar to transit, transportation revenues ended the year $200,000 under estimates related to local transportation fund reimbursements. These reimbursements were lower than anticipated due to vacancies and material service supply savings. The Youth Development Fund ended the year $1.3 million below estimates. The primary factor contributing to the shortfall was related to part-time staff shortages. Since participant and staff ratios are required to maintain child care licensing, the shortage in part-time staff resulted in fewer participants allowed into the program. This shortfall is offset by $1.6 million in expenditure savings. The FY22 budget also included a $3.5 million transfer of ARPA funds to help mitigate the impacts of COVID-19. So moving on to enterprise operating expenditures. As you can see from this slide and the amounts circled in red, all the enterprise funds ended the year under budget, ranging from $5.7 million in wastewater and $400,000 in transportation. In the following slides, I'm going to go into more details on each of these variances. The electric fund ended the year $2.8 million under budget. Approximately $1.1 million of the remaining funds was related to the $5.2 million budget adjustment that was approved by Council in fiscal year 22 for increased power and gas prices. The department ended up only spending about $4.1 million of the budget adjustment, which resulted in about $1.1 million in savings. The department also realized $1.7 million in savings due to lower than anticipated maintenance and contract service spending, as well as vacancy savings. And the department realized a lower than anticipated amount of capital-related reimbursements that was offset by department savings overall. The environmental utility funds all ended the year under budget, with the water fund at $5.1 million, wastewater fund at $5.7 million, and waste services at $3.9 million. Spending in the environmental utility funds came in lower than budget due to vacancy savings and COVID-related limitations on travel and training plans at the beginning of the fiscal year. And savings in the waste service funds are also attributed to delaying the implementation of additional routes related to the organics mandate. Transit expenditures ended the year $600,000 under budget due to operational adjustments related to transit ridership reductions reflected in lower contracts and fuel costs. And these expenditure savings offset the $600,000 revenue shortfall in this fund. Cost savings of $400,000 in the transportation fund are related to vacancies and lower than anticipated material service supply expenses, and these savings offset the $200,000 revenue shortfall in this fund. Lastly, the Youth Development Fund ended the year $1.6 million under budget. And these savings are associated with part-time staff shortages that I mentioned previously, and measures staff took to offset the anticipated revenue shortfall of $1.3 million. So next, I'm going to provide an update on our fire facilities, public facilities, and strategic development funds. Revenue exceeded estimates in all three of these funds, with fire facilities exceeding estimates by $1 million, public facilities exceeding estimates by $3.1 million, and strategic improvement exceeding estimates by $700,000. The revenue estimates for all these three funds are based on a multi-year analysis of single-family and multifamily commercial development. Development activity in fiscal year 22 continued to be higher than anticipated, which contributed to the revenue variances in each of these funds. Also, I did want to note that the revenue budget for Strategic Improvement Fund was lower than prior year because the prior year included some proceeds from some surplus property sales. And lastly, this slide provides an update on the fund balances for each of these funds as of June 30th, 2022. Fire Facilities Fund ended the year with a balance of $7.4 million. Public Facilities ended the year with a fund balance of $18.4 million, and the Strategic Improvement Fund ended the year with a $13.7 million fund balance. It's important to remember that the balance in the Fire Facilities Fund has been used in the current year for Station 8, and a significant amount of the other two funds were budgeted for the sports complex. So this concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm going to hand it over to Dennis.
All right. So with this $31.5 million general fund surplus at the end of fiscal year 22, staff are recommending a budget adjustment that includes projects and initiatives that are aligned with the City Council's strategic plan, as well as the intent of the Measure B sales and tax measure, as well as with the City Council approved financial policies. And the next slide provides a listing of what is included in the recommended budget adjustment, starting with the Roseville Soccer Complex at the top. The current budget for that project is $29 million, and this $15 million augmentation was planned in the adopted budget to come from this year-end surplus, bringing the available budget for the project to $44 million. Staff will be providing the City Council with an update on the project at the Council Goals Workshop next month. I'm going to skip the next two transfers on this list and come back to them at the end. I wanted to talk a little bit about the Blue Oaks widening project. This $4 million appropriation is for design and environmental work for this project that will make the roadway 4 lanes in each direction between Wood Creek Oaks and Washington Boulevard, including a new bridge that will be adjacent to the existing bridge over the Union Pacific Railroad and Industrial Avenue. The timing of the construction will depend on the availability of construction funding, but this amount of money will get the design and the environmental work done so that when the construction funding is available, we'll be ready to start the widening of Blue Oaks. The next line item is backfilling the general fund contingency. This recommendation is here because we use some of the general fund contingency to pay for the portion of the labor market adjustments that exceeded the initial estimates. Those are the labor market adjustments that went into effect this month from our labor contracts. And replenishing the contingency will allow staff to address unanticipated requirements that may come up during the rest of this fiscal year. The next item on there is the police department mobile data computers. These are the computers in their vehicles largely, and these are up for replacement in spring of 2024, but we want to budget for them now to provide adequate time for procurement, delivery, and installation of that equipment. The next line item, sports field fencing. The city's been granted $250,000 from Placer Valley Tourism to fence the Maidu soccer complex. Staff are recommending matching that contribution, as well as spending some money to fence 2 ball fields at both Harry Crabb and Central Park. And that'll protect the city's investment in those facilities where we've converted turf at Maidu, and fencing the fields will minimize misuse and allow staff the ability to close them down when maintenance is needed. The next line item is the Development Services Reserve. This is a new reserve that Council adopted a policy last year to establish to bridge gaps when development revenues slow down in the future. This $518,000 of development services revenue that we would be adding to that reserve as part of this recommended budget adjustment would achieve the policy target, which is 6 months of planning and building revenues in the general fund. And then once we reach the target with this deposit on an annual basis, then we'll just reevaluate the target for that reserve and make minor adjustments. But this amount will get us up to the policy target. The next line item is Maidu Soccer Field, and this is converting the existing gravel parking lot there to a paved asphalt parking lot. People have been wanting that for a long time. The next line item is the multimodal general plan update project. So the city implemented a general plan update fee to pay for the last general plan update and to pay for future general plan updates. This fee is paid on building permits. And the last general plan was funded with an internal loan that was paid off with this fee. And now the amounts that are collected from this fee will be set aside in a project to pay for future general plan updates. The multimodal safety improvement project, this $180,000 appropriation will allow Public Works to complete the design and the environmental phases of this project. And this is the project that will construct a raised median on Vernon and Atlantic and some other safety improvements there. The project's estimated total cost is about $1.5 million. and that project will be funded by a variety of funding sources. This is a project that will replace the previously approved Vernon Roundabout, which would have cost several $1 million more. And then finally, the Royer Park Playground Project. This appropriation will augment the project budget to replace the aging play area at Royer Park. This additional funding will cover additional shade structures as well as ADA paths within the play area. So with that list of high priority initiatives and projects funded, staff recommends allocating the remaining $9 million, so I'm going back to the second and third line of this list, between the Pension Trust Fund and the Capital Reserve Fund. The Pension Trust Fund was approved last year with a city policy, and $8 million was appropriated in the current year budget for that trust fund. This deposit of about $4.5 million will bring the Pension Trust Fund to approximately $12.5 million. The resources in the Capital Reserve Fund will be brought back to Council in the form of budget adjustments as other high-priority projects move forward, including the 4 new traffic signals and associated roadway improvements related to the soccer complex. So with this list and those details, that is the recommended budget adjustment that goes along with this item. And Scott and I are here to answer any questions that you have.
Dennis and Scott, before I open it to public, Councilmember Mendoza, do you have any questions?
No. Good presentation. Thank you.
Councilwoman Rakucci?
I thought it was really thorough. Went into very well.
Councilman Albert?
I had a couple questions. Just one comment to start. It's impressive that the departments are pretty frugal and being under budget, and I know some of that is with the positions being open, which isn't always a good thing, but it's nice to see that they were all within budget. That's nice. The police department mobile computers, I think that's a great thing to spend money on, but a lot of our departments, we budget ahead for repair and replacement so that we don't have. If we didn't have the surplus, where would we be? Were they not budgeting ahead, or were we not budgeting ahead for this? And so I just wanted to get response on that, and can we start budgeting for the next replacement down the road? And then I think go ahead and start with that, and I had one other.
Okay. So both equipment and IT technology, hardware and software are both categories of our CIP rehab program. And our CIP rehab program, we recommended to council last year to kind of accelerate the funding of that program, but it's still not completely funded. And so unlike fleet vehicles, which for the most part we save up money each year so that when a vehicle is ready to be replaced, we have the money to replace it, we're not there yet with our other categories of deferred maintenance. And so our CIP rehab policy is allowing us each year to budget more and more in the general fund to get to the point where we're saving up for these types of things. But the reality is, as we bring forward the amount under that policy to spend, let's say, in next year's budget, and we ask the departments what equipment or facilities or IT do they have that needs to be replaced, we're spending that money on all those things. And so the backlog soaks up the money so that we're not able to save very much for the future. But that policy has us ramping up the funding, so eventually we'll have enough that we're saving for the future like we do with fleet vehicles.
Thanks. And then one other comment, and I'm going to ask it just on behalf of the public that might be watching. Sales tax always seems to be wildly off. And I was wondering if you could just address that a little bit. Why is it so hard to estimate sales tax? And because it seems like we're always way under over. And
well, it's interesting. Before the pandemic, wildly off was $1 million. And now wildly off is $10 million, right? And so there's been a number of factors that have made estimating economic activity very difficult for the leading economists. And if you look at the state budget surplus that they've had for the last couple of years, they've been huge. And we've seen large surpluses related to sales tax, primarily throughout California. And it really is a number of factors. Scott mentioned a couple of them. Inflation is one of them. If the price of goods goes up 8%, then we're collecting 8% more sales tax. If the price of gasoline doubles, then we're collecting a lot more sales tax. And those are things that you can't predict 3, 6, 12 months into the future. we had no idea gas prices were going to escalate like they did over the course of the last year and a half. And now they've dropped back down. And so the experts are saying where we received 10 or 15% growth in our sales tax last year, this year we ought to be expecting 2 to 3%.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Vice Mayor Bernasconi?
I would just want to say that as we prepared for this item, it makes me thankful for Measure B, thankful for our city manager and our leadership of our department heads for spearheading this list that aligns closely with our council goals, as you mentioned. And I just want to thank you for the education around the enterprise funds, because I think many people aren't aware about how that's so different for our city's budget. So thank you.
Yeah, I'd echo Vice Mayor Bernasconi's comments as well. Boy, this is, 31.5 million, and you budgeted conservatively, and we're fiscally conservative, and that leads to the quality of life we have. And so I echo Vice Mayor Bernasconi's comments on that. Scott, you mentioned when you were doing your electric retail sales, and that's not commercial, tell me what retail sales means. I mean, I turn the heat up in my house, and so that's a retail sale?
Yeah, I think it's a majority of that's residential retail sales.
It's residential, not, versus our a Penumbra or some of our industrial commercial.
It includes both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Residential and commercial.
The Section 115 pension trust fund, is that something we have internally, or we have it with advisor?
Staff are working on an RFP right now, a request for proposals to.
We just have it parked right now in our budget. Okay, thanks. The total cost of the Roseville Sports Complex, you probably said it and I missed it.
I don't know the total cost yet, and that's why you're going to receive an update next month at the Council Goals Workshop.
Okay. And then we'll probably receive an update on the total cost of the Blue Oaks Bridge. I remember that was one of the first.
Right now, we're just spending $4 million on the design and environmental. We won't know until we're ready to construct it how much it's going to cost, and we need to accumulate the funding, and it could be a number of years.
Yeah, and for many years we heard Governor Brown say the recession is coming, the recession is coming. Do we have any in the first and second quarter of this fiscal year? Do we have any comparables about how that's tracking? Okay.
Yeah, you can listen to different radio and TV channels and get different stories every day.
Right.
A number of factors are saying that we have been in a recession for the last quarter or two. Some people are saying it could be next year. Nobody knows.
But we'll look at those first and second quarters.
We're going to continue being
Start
we're going to continue being prudent and listening to the experts.
Very much. I'm going to open it up for public comment. No public comment. I'm going to close public comment and see if the council has any other questions regarding the presentation. Hearing none, I'll ask the clerk.
Maybe just one thing is that I really appreciate that, we're going over different parts of our budget, and it's not just today, but we've gone over multiple times during the year and different aspects, because many people know that, but once in a while you hear people saying, what's the budget, what's happening? And I think it's real important to know that you can watch it. It can be televised, it's online, it's accessible, and there's actually a budget and brief that goes over how we look at things every so many months. And of course, if there is something that's a significant change, our finance department will come and give us a presentation. So I'm real appreciative of the finance department doing this and keeping us abreast of all the different changes. And like you said, we could have a lot of money one time and a little bit less, but I think it's the balance that we do, and that we're conservative, and we can go out and work on projects that the community is interested in, and things that we of council has looked as priorities, but we're also make sure that we have money for a rainy day, and that we look at all those aspects. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Councilwoman Riccucci. That reminds me that I had an opportunity. You've put up open budget .com or something like that now, and I had an opportunity to try to go to answer some of my own questions before. And that's our transparency and accountability. So with that, I'll ask the clerk to read the motion.
Mr. Mayor, the City Council will consider accepting a year-end report for fiscal year 2021-22 for the general fund, the enterprise operating funds, and the revenues and select other funds, and also adopt an ordinance number 6595 authorizing certain amendments to the fiscal year 2022-23 budget and declaring this ordinance to be immediately effective as an appropriation measure. If I can get a motion to approve, please.
Second?
I have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Councilmember Albert.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Haldeshelt.
Yes, thank you very
Motion
much for
passes
your.
unanimously.
Our next item is a public hearing on the advanced meter infrastructure and the Roseville Municipal Code Amendment and user and regulatory fee. So I'm going to open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Haldeshelt. Sean Matcham, Assistant Director with Roseville Electric. Here with me this evening is Eric Campbell, our Financial Administrator. We have a brief presentation on this agenda item. Eric will step through the presentation, and we'll be glad to answer any questions once we're done.
Thanks, Sean. Again, Eric Campbell, Roseville Electric. And we have a quick item here, like Sean mentioned. I'm going to talk about opt-out quite a bit. What is opt-out? Opt-out is for those customers that don't wish to have the smart meter technology on their homes for a number of different reasons. It could be for privacy, for health reasons. And so most jurisdictions offer up the option to opt out of the AMI meter. So this is nothing different that's happening in other jurisdictions, whether it be SMUD, PG&E, et cetera, across the state. So we're getting to the point now where we're going to launch into the pilot phase of the project. So we're going to be actually putting meters in the field beginning in March of this year, in fact, March 6th. We're going to be installing about 800 meters for this pilot program, and we want to get ahead of it and let our customers know that if they do choose to opt out later in this particular subset that we're doing this pilot program with, that there will be a fee. They can opt out now as part of the pilot, and there's no fee. But we want to let them know up front that if they opt out later, there will be a fee. So like I mentioned, we're going to be launching into the pilot in about a month and a half here. The pilot's going to be located in the Blue Oaks Boulevard, Wood Creek Oaks area. About 800 meters are going to be deployed in that area over about 12 to 15 days. There is going to be a whole lot of outreach. There's going to be postcards sent to these homes. There's going to be door hangers. So we're going to do our best to let folks know that we're going to be there in the neighborhood installing these meters. And again, like I mentioned, we're going to offer the alternative for folks that want to opt out to use a non-communicating meter. We're thinking there's going to be roughly 50 or so of these types of customers in our jurisdiction. That's typically the percentage that folks, that other utilities are seeing in terms of opt-out. Eligibility, this is targeted at the residential customers, so it's the single-family homes, duplexes, townhomes. There are some customers that are not going to be eligible. Customers that are part of our net energy metering program, these are our NEM customers. Those meters are much more sophisticated. They need this enhanced technology to communicate, and so we cannot offer a non-communicating meter to those types of customers. We also plan not to offer it to customers who have tampered with their meters in the past or have unauthorized procurement of energy, otherwise stealing. And also multifamily customers, folks in apartment complexes as well. They're not eligible for this program. There'll be a one-time fee for these customers that do opt out once we do get to the final deployment, which will probably start in the June to July timeframe. The one-time fee is $119, and that's really to cover the cost of the meter and the installation of the non-communicating meter. Those folks that are in our low-income programs, whether it be ERAP, senior discounts, et cetera, they're going to get a 50% discount, 50. We're going to make up that differential with our public benefit money. So we're going to do what we can to ease the burden on that customer group if they want to opt out of the program. There's going to be a monthly fixed rate that'll pay for the monthly meter reading that we have to go out and do manually. For the single-family customers, it's going to be $15 a month. And again, we're going to offer a discount for low-income customers. Those customers are income qualified. Knock it down to $750. The differential will be funded by our public benefit money. And again, the cost included there for the $15 is meter reading, vehicle costs, so windshield time, to take the meter reader out to the residents to read the meter, and then any maintenance required. For comparison's sake, this is how we look to other regional utilities. You can see we compare pretty favorably there. Again, I mentioned our one-time fee is $119. The monthly fee is going to be $15. We're going to actually be out in the field reading these meters monthly. Some other utilities are doing it bi-monthly. We're not quite ready to do that yet. We're not comfortable doing the estimates every other month. So we're going to kick it off with the monthly reads. We may get to the point where we could back it off and do it every other month, but we're just not ready to do that now. Something I neglected to mention earlier, these fees are cost-based, so it's directly related to the cost of labor that relates back to our collective bargaining agreements, the cost of meters, things of that nature. So there's no extra built in here. It's in alignment with our rate-making policy to have cost-based rates. And then lastly, we're recommending to council that we adopt a one-time fee for advanced meter opt-out and amend the master schedule of user and regulatory fees for qualifying customers for costs related to the purchase and installation for a non-communicating meter. And then also introduce for first reading a monthly fixed rate for the ongoing cost of manually reading and maintaining these non-communicating meters for opt-out customers. So that's our base presentation, and we'll open it up to questions.
All right, before I open up for public comment, I want to see if the council has any.
Yeah, I do. Can you explain how they work? I mean, so would somebody come to your house or drive by with an instrument and could read that, or is it something in an office, or?
So once the new communicating meters are installed, they'll communicate wirelessly. So we won't have to drive by any longer. It'll communicate, just like your phone. There'll be a web over the city that you can't see, to where the information travels back to data collectors, if you will. That'll come back to the utility.
So what it shows is just how much electricity you used at a particular time?
Yes.
And so you were showing how much a month you pay, like I think $15 a month. And is that like every month forever, or is?
As long as you're in the opt-out program.
Oh, if you're in the opt-out
Yeah, it's only for those
program.
customers that opt out. There will be no fee for customers that don't opt out.
Oh, okay, got it. Because I was seeing the other ones where it was the 119, and I was looking at the other number. Okay, so that 115 is only if you want to not do it,
Right, exactly.
because they have to come to your house and literally do it what they do now.
It remains a manual process.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Scott?
I just wondered if you could just touch on, so the $119 for the installation of a non-communicating meter, we already have non-communicating meters in our home, so could you please address what's different about that?
A lot of the meters that we currently have are communicating. We can drive by these homes and pull data from the meters. So just to be forthcoming, they already are communicating. So we're actually taking a step back to install these non-communicating meters.
Thank you. I just thought we should address that since it sounds odd.
Yeah.
So,
Great. Anyone else before I
Yep,
open?
I have a question.
Yep.
So how will this impact the resident in terms of, I think now we're told to make sure that your meter is accessible, or you can't put a fence around it, or it needs to be on the front of your house. Will that change at all?
It will not change, but the door hangers will let the customer know when we're going to be out there to make sure we have access to the meter. Yeah, I mean, it won't change that at all.
So the city will still want to have access
Access.
to the meter? Okay. All right, thank you.
All right, Councilman Mendoza?
My
All
question's
right.
been covered. Thank you.
I'll open up for public comment. Seeing no public comment, I'll close public comment and close the public hearing. And great questions from the council, great clarifying questions. Are there any additional questions or presentations? And I'll ask the clerk to read a motion.
Thank you very much. So at this time, the City Council will consider adopting Resolution Number 23-015, adopting an amended schedule of user and regulatory fees, and introducing the first reading and an ordinance of the Council of the City of Roseville, amending Chapter 14.24 of Title 14 of the Roseville Municipal Code regarding electric energy.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you. We have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll ask Vice Mayor for her vote. Vice Mayor Bernasconi?
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord? Yes. Councilmember Mendoza?
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci?
Yes.
And Mayor Haldeshelt?
Yes.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously.
This next public hearing is item 10.2, North Industrial Plan Area Parcel 56, 2200 Freedom Way, Blue Oaks Commerce Center. Major Project Permit Stage 1 modification and Major Project Permit Stage 2, the appeal, and I will open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Haldeshelt, members of the City Council. I'm Greg Bitter, Planning Manager with the Development Services Department. I'm here tonight with Derek Ogden, a Senior Planner, as Scarlett Marr, who will be doing the presentation for you tonight, and we also have Mark Stout, the City Engineer. So I will let Scarlett jump right in with the presentation.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. The item before you, as we mentioned, is the Blue Oaks Commerce Center Appeal Project. So the project site is located within the previously approved Blue Oaks Commerce Center development, which does encompass approximately 49 acres of developed and undeveloped land. The center is bounded by Blue Oaks Boulevard to the north, Washington Boulevard to the east, some existing industrial users to the south, and Industrial Avenue to the east. The project site has a land use and zoning designation of general industrial, and the applicant is requesting a major project permit stage 1 modification and an MPP stage 2 to allow the development of 4 new industrial buildings on 2 parcels as illustrated in red on the screen. So the MPP stage 1 modification would reduce the number of buildings as well as rearrange the site layout. The site plan on the left-hand side of the screen does show the original site plan with 10 buildings totaling approximately 260,000 square feet in size. The site plan on the right-hand side does show the proposed project with 4 industrial buildings totaling 310,000 square feet, an increase of 50,000 square feet from the original approval. Overall, the proposed buildings are similar to the previously approved design and are consistent with both the North Roseville Area Design Guidelines as well as the city's Community Design Guidelines. Consistent with the California Environmental Quality Act, an addendum to the Blue Oaks Commerce Center Initial Study MMD was prepared for the project. And on September 22nd, the Planning Commission did consider the addendum and approve the project where no public comments were received. Following the public hearing, the city did receive an appeal letter of the Planning Commission's decision from the Lozow Drury Law Firm, representing the Laborers International Union of North America. The appeal letter alleged that the project should have completed an initial study because there are mitigation measures necessary to address the project's significant cumulative air quality impacts as well as air pollution and energy usage. So following the appeal in October, the city staff received a letter from the applicant's attorney agreeing with the city's determination that an addendum was indeed the appropriate CEQA document for compliance and requested that the city council deny the appeal. Now, prior to the scheduled December 7th city council meeting, the city received 2 additional letters from the appellant expanding on the previous allegations as well as bringing 1 new area of concern related to biological resources. So the applicant did request to continue the project, and on December 7th, staff requested formally from the City Council to continue the item to a date certain. So following these public hearing on December 7th, the city did receive a second letter from the applicant's attorney responding to the appellant's letters from the December 6th and 7th letters. So the following slides do provide a summary of all the issues raised in the appellant's original appeal letter as well as its subsequent letters with responses from staff. So first, the appellant asserted that the project may have potentially significant cumulative air quality impacts that were not previously analyzed in the 2010 initial study. However, the appellant failed to provide project-specific impacts associated with the air quality that would warrant new mitigation measures. So the project's air quality impacts were previously analyzed in the 2010 initial study, which found that the project to be less than significant with mitigation measures. Further, the 2020 General Plan EIR update further evaluated air quality impacts associated with the build-out of the center. Based on this analysis, the proposed square footage does remain less than the total amount of development assumed within the general plan EIR update. Based on this information, an initial study is not warranted. The second and third claim the appellant made is that the project did not properly examine the increase in air pollution and energy usage associated with the additional building square footage. And once again, the appellant failed to provide project-specific impacts that would result in increased impacts to both air quality and energy usage. So the addendum does acknowledge that energy was not previously analyzed in the 2010 initial study, because energy is a new area that is now required to be examined. However, based on the project's land use designation, the assumed development was evaluated as part of the citywide analysis prepared for the general plan EIR update, which assessed the energy demand and determined that the project would not result in substantial unplanned demands, nor would it result in inefficient, wasteful, or unnecessary consumption of energy. So further, while the square footage did increase compared to the original approved entitlements, the square footage does remain less than the total amount of development assumed within the general plan EIR update. Therefore, emissions from the project are actually not a new project-specific impact area requiring further analysis. The new claim raised by the appellant in their latest letters, as mentioned, asserted that the increase in building square footage could increase truck traffic and result in 669 wildlife fatalities per year. As noted in the biological survey, there is no evidence to show that the increase in building square footage will actually increase wildlife fatalities. Early notification of the project was posted on the Roseville Coalitions of Neighborhoods Association's website, and the public hearing notice for the December 7th meeting was mailed to property owners within 300 feet of the project site, published in the Roseville Press Tribune, and posted on the Arcona website again. In conclusion, staff finds that the proposed modifications are substantially consistent with the intent of the original approval, and the project is consistent with the general plan, the zoning ordinance, the North Roseville Area Design Guidelines, and the city's community design guidelines. Based on this information presented to you this evening and the evaluation of the City Council communication, staff recommends the City Council take the following actions as listed on the screen. This concludes my presentation. I'm available to answer any questions.
Hey, before I open it up, any questions on the presentation?
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor?
Yeah.
I just wonder if you could just talk about the general industrial zoning that currently is there, and what range of types of businesses and things could possibly fit in a general industrial area, as opposed to what's coming or what's planned.
Yeah, I think you could have a whole host of industrial uses, anything from warehouses to manufacturing. It's one of our more heavy industrial zones in the city.
I'd also like to point out, it's something that Scarlett mentioned, but when this project was originally approved, the original approval included a mixture of light industrial uses, office uses, and commercial uses. It's been modified over time. The FBI building that is currently located on the site, when that project was approved, it took away all of the commercial, the originally identified commercial uses on the site, and about 40,000 square feet of commercial and about 80,000 square feet of light industrial uses were switched over to office uses. So that particular project also reduced the overall intensity that was originally studied for this site and identified.
So for equity of the area, you could actually increase the intensity of the use of this property and still be within the design.
That's part of the conclusion, and that's part of what we talked about in the project description of the addendum. Yes.
Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Councilman Alvord. Now I'd like to invite the applicant, if they would like to make a presentation. I'll give you 10 minutes. You can go less. You get extra credit for less than 10 minutes, okay?
Feeling a lot of pressure, Mayor, because this is the most efficient council meeting I've ever been to in 25 years of practice. So I'm going to talk super fast. I'm Alicia Guerra with Buckhalter. I'm an attorney, and we represent Schnitzer Properties, the applicant for the Blue Oaks Commerce Center. I've actually been working on this project since it was initially proposed in 2010 and assisted with all the permitting and some of the entitlement work for it. So they like to say land use attorneys run with the land, and I've been kind of involved with the land and with this project. Ms. Marr provided such a wonderful, thorough presentation of the project in the background here. I'm not going to reiterate all of the history and the studies that have been done and the CEQA analysis. We also submitted a couple of comment letters October 22nd to respond to the September 30th appeal from LiUNA and December 21st to further respond to the additional letters that LiUNA's attorneys submitted. But I will address, I think, for the record, the context in which we should evaluate this appeal. It's interesting to me that the commenter here would show up 12 years after all of the analysis has already been prepared, and it was very thorough. And as CEQA contemplates, you kept studying every time that there was a change in the project, you did further CEQA review. That's what CEQA says to do. This is not the time at the end of the process to go back and say, we think we should do an EIR. And the reason is that the substantial evidence that's in the record that Ms. Marr walked through for you demonstrates that these modifications to the project that are reflected in this latest application actually reduce the impacts compared to what was studied before. And they've been evaluated as part of your general plan update. So not only did you get project-specific review of this project showing that the impacts were less than significant, but your citywide documents have said that it's less than significant. Unfortunately, the appellant believes that all you have to do is add 50,000 square feet to one building, and all of a sudden now you need to do an EIR 12 years later. Again, that's not what CEQA says. CEQA says there has to be substantial evidence that a change you make to the project actually causes a new significant impact or a substantial increase in the severity of the prior impacts. That is not the case here, as Ms. Marr's analysis demonstrated. There is a record of and a body of work that shows all of the impacts were studied and they actually decrease in terms of their significance. So I want to briefly talk about a couple of the comments that the appellant thinks would justify an EIR or a revised initial study, mitigate a negative declaration. The first is related to air quality and the GHG, the greenhouse gas emissions analysis and energy. All of that was evaluated, and there were no significant impacts. And even though it's a new requirement under CEQA that you have to study those things, they'd actually already been evaluated in different categories. So it wasn't that it was not evaluated, it was just put in a different category in the analysis that you previously prepared back in 2010. So again, no new significant impact, no substantial increase in the severity of impacts. What's interesting to me, or more interesting to me, is the thing about the birds. The birds are kind of questionable here. The site is completely disturbed. The birds that were shown in the photographs that were provided in the appellant's comment letter have actually been used in comments on other projects in the Bay Area, some of the projects I've worked on. These birds get around, I guess, I'm not sure, but they're not here. And so we sent a biologist out to just confirm that there's no habitat. Because of the permits that had been issued back in 2014 and 2016 and some of the work that was done for the FBI building, the property has been completely disturbed. We confirmed that again. There isn't anything out there. There is development in the area. And so it's extremely unlikely that 669 wildlife fatalities are going to occur because the area is disturbed and there are no specially listed status species and no habitat to support that. So with all of that in mind, there is no substantial evidence to support that further environmental review is required. The city did conduct a very thorough analysis and did what CEQA requires, which was study the impacts and demonstrate that the modifications don't have a greater impact or a new impact. So we would respectfully request that you deny the appeal, uphold the analysis and the great work that staff has done here, and move forward with this project so that the buildings can be completed and the city can see this project moving forward. I'm available to answer any questions you have, and I apologize for the CEQA education or background on CEQA, but I thought it would be helpful here. And Ryan Scherer with Schnitzer Properties is also available if you have questions about the project. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant?
It's fine. Thank you.
Thank you for a very,
Very good.
sorry, because I didn't hear your name again.
Sure, it's Alicia Guerra with Buckhalter.
You want to spell Alicia for me?
Sure. It's ALICIA, and last name is GUERRA. I signed the letters, so
Yeah,
it's
so
me.
we'll be able to track it down
You
there.
can
All
track
right.
it down.
Thank you. All right.
you.
Thank you very much. Is the appellant here?
Hi, good evening. My name is Amalia Boli Fuentes. I'm an attorney with the law firm Lozo Drury, and I'm commenting today on behalf of Labor's International Union of North America, Local 185, or LIUNA. LIUNA is requesting that the City Council grant its appeal of the Planning Commission's approval of the addendum for the Blue Oaks Commerce Center for three main reasons. First, the addendum's findings are unsupported by substantial evidence. Second, the use of an addendum here is inappropriate because the project presents new and more significant environmental effects than those analyzed in the 2010 MND. And third, the use of an addendum is inappropriate here because new mitigation measures have been developed since 2010, which can mitigate the project's potentially significant impacts. These reasons are set forth in detail in LIUNA's comments submitted in December of last year. And in the time I have tonight, I'd like to address some of the city's responses to the issues we raised in our December comment letters. So first, vehicle collision impacts on wildlife. The analysis submitted by Dr. Sean Smallwood, estimating the amount of wildlife mortality that could result from increased traffic on the project site, is not a transportation analysis, as was characterized in one of the city's written responses. The estimated vehicle miles traveled were used as a basis to predict project-generated traffic impacts to wildlife. And Dr. Smallwood's findings were also based on numerous scientific studies and his own 30-plus years of experience. He did not do a site visit. This was based on other studies that have been published, so the images that were used were not purported to be site-specific images. And the city's one-day site visit was not enough to support absence determinations of any of these species. And further, road mortality impacts involve animals that occur off-site, not simply ones that are occurring on-site. So the wildlife fatalities from the project's traffic are a significant impact on biological resources, which has not been addressed. Next are the new warehouse mitigation measures. As we noted in our comment letter, there has been a statewide increase in warehouse and distribution centers, and truck trips associated with those facilities have a number of adverse impacts on the environment and public health. The city's response letter says that the state attorney general's mitigation measures for warehouses are not considerably different from those analyzed in 2010. However, there are many recommendations in the attorney general report which are not being incorporated into this project. For example, to name a few, Tier 4 or better construction equipment, prohibiting grading on days with certain air quality index levels, requiring heavy-duty vehicles to be zero emission by 2030, and many more. And according to CEQA guidelines on addendums, the failure to consider and adopt these measures makes the use of an addendum inappropriate here. And lastly is the city's failure to adequately investigate air quality impacts. The burden of environmental investigation into potential impacts from the project is on the city. The city's response states that LIUNA claimed without evidence that the project would have increased impacts on emissions, but the city itself stated that there would be a 17% increase in construction-related reactive organic gas emissions from this project. Beyond this statement, the addendum did not conduct additional assessment or modeling of emissions from this project or provide an explanation of how mitigation measures would address those emissions. And in any case, a 17% increase in impacts is a substantial increase in the severity of previously identified significant effects and precludes reliance on the addendum. So LIUNA therefore respectfully requests that the City Council grant its appeal and asks that the City of Roseville prepare either an MND or an EIR to analyze the project's potential impacts. Thank you.
Before you leave, any questions of the appellant?
I have a question. I'm a little confused on the project impacts on wildlife off-site. So more vehicles are likely to hit more animals on the road, even if it's not on the site. How is that different? I don't understand. How is it different because of the change in the square footage than what it would have been normally for that whole footprint? It sounds like it's a less use than it could have been. I'm totally not understanding why all of a sudden it's a big increase? Or
So this impact actually was not even addressed in the 2010 mitigated negative declaration. So this would constitute new information that, has arisen based on substantial evidence from our experts. So it's not a change from this project, but something that was not addressed in the 2010 MND either.
Thanks.
Any other questions of the appellant?
No, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll open it up for public comment. Seeing no public comment, I will close it and bring it back to the council. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Allow the applicant 3 minutes for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. With respect to the issue of vehicle collision impacts and the birds, our biologists, when they conducted the study of the site, they also did a drive-by and evaluated the circumstances surrounding the property, and there's a lot of development in this area and other activity going on. So it's not that these trips that would be generated by a 50,000 square foot increase would actually cause the specific impacts that the appellant is asserting. There is no evidence that they can actually draw a chain of how cars coming from this site are going to run over birds. That is a speculative circumstance. Speculation is not viewed as substantial evidence under CEQA, and there's a lot of case law on this. So notwithstanding the fact that Dr. Smallwood's 30 years of expertise or experience would support that birds might get run over here, there is no actual direct evidence that birds are in this area. Those particular birds were not noted. We had a very extensive species list indicating that those birds are not there. And the likelihood of impact specifically from this building was not established as based on substantial evidence. So I understand the concern that the appellant's attorney has raised, but that's speculation. It's not actually based on substantial evidence here. And the prior CEQA document did actually evaluate impacts to all sorts of biological resources and species within the area, including bird species, listed bird species, and none of the listed bird species were actually identified in any comments from the appellant. So that issue does not demonstrate that there was a significant new impact or a substantial increase in the severity of impacts. With respect to the warehouse mitigation measures, the conditions of approval require extensive construction, air quality mitigation, and BMPs and measures to address potential increases in pollutants, and also compliance with the general plan update requirements related to operational considerations. And there was no demonstration that these specific measures actually were different than those that have already been incorporated into the project as standard air quality mitigation measures, and that to not have them would somehow result in greater impacts than what had already been addressed. There are no impacts. And so there's case law that basically says if a project doesn't have any significant impacts, it doesn't trigger the need for mitigation. And to say now at the time of an addendum for a modification that now all of a sudden you have to come up with Tier 4 equipment and all these extra things does not reflect the actual analysis of what has occurred here in the whole context of the project. And then with respect to the 17% increase in the size of the building, again, CEQA says that you can have a change in a project. The question is whether that change causes a substantial increase in the severity of the impacts. That has not happened here, as the addendum demonstrated how all of the changes did not result in greater impacts. So just because it's a 17% increase and just because there's more traffic, that traffic actually was evaluated in the general plan update. That increase actually fit within the general plan update EIR's analysis for the entire project and then some. So there's no impact. And so there's still no basis, not even to trigger a fair argument that an initial study mitigated NEGDEC or EIR would be required. I hope that addressed your questions. If anybody has any further questions, I'm available to answer them.
Any further questions from the council? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now I'll close the public hearing and go back to the council to see if there are, yes, Councilman Albert?
Yeah, I wanted to ask the staff. So it sounds like the issue is not so much vertebrae is getting hit by vehicles and pollution, all that. It's going back, and there's a feeling that they need to redo the EIR. And so one side says we should do that. The other side says there's no need to do that. I was wondering if you could, and I think you guys actually recommend not doing that as well, but could you readdress that based on what was said here?
Sure. The original environmental document prepared for the overall Blue Oaks Commerce Center project was a mitigated negative declaration. And it evaluated, I believe it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 568,000 square feet of light industrial uses, commercial uses, and office uses. So that was the envelope that was studied at the time. As this project has evolved, the FBI building, as I mentioned, replaced some of the commercial and some of the light industrial uses with an office use, much less intense. The staff report for that project showed that it was much less intense as far as traffic, peak hour traffic goes. So the envelope that was studied, we believe that this project, while this particular two parcels, there's a 17% increase, the overall project that was studied is less intense than the original mitigated negative declaration looked at. In addition, some of the comments on air quality, energy usage, when we did the general plant update, we prepared an EIR. The intensity of this project site, the original intensity was put into that evaluation. That was what we studied, was the ability to build that original intensity, the 568,000 square feet mix of uses. So that EIR looked at build out of the city, of course, but for this particular site, which we're tiering off of, it anticipated that intensity. And so any mitigation measures related to that EIR apply, and that EIR didn't find any impacts on energy usage. Or evaluated that and reconciled that impact. So the appellant wants us to do another initial study, go back through all of the different checklists, and there is the checklist in the addendum where we did go back and look through all of the different potential impact areas. But they believe that we should study that and do a brand new mitigated negative declaration, or if there is a significant unavoidable impact, which we don't believe we would find, then an EIR would be appropriate. We don't believe that there's evidence in the record or there's changes to the project, as Ms. Guerra mentioned, that would cause us to do one of those documents based on the law.
Great, thank you.
Great. Any other?
Just a quick question, Greg. I'm trying to wrap my mind around this because I travel that stretch of roadway several times a day. I've got good friends that work at the FBI building.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are times I drive a very tall catering van and I drive a very low sedan. And I can't think of a time, or me personally or anybody has come to me and said, I keep hitting these darn birds. I'm just thinking of like a Hitchcock movie. I mean, has someone actually come out and said that, this is an issue?
So that's why I think, and you heard the comments, that this is speculative.
Okay.
And if you think about it, trucking from warehousing, I mean, this can be interstate transportation. So if this is just using how many trips are associated with how many square feet, and then some other study shows that per mile, these many wildlife, this could be birds in Omaha, Nebraska that are getting hit. I mean, there's no...
Don't have any direct correlation, right?
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing I would point out is there's about 14 million square feet of built area in our industrial land in the city of Roseville. And because I can't help myself, I do the math. So that's about 187,000 wildlife strikes on an annual basis, 513 birds a day, every day, 365 days a year. So, that's why we believe it's speculation. There is no evidence that there's 500 birds a day being struck by vehicles in the city of Roseville.
Do you think somebody would say something? If you get 500 things hit a day, somebody would mention something, right?
I think one of the members of the city council would hear about that.
Yeah, I would think so too. Okay, I had to just drill into that for a second because I was having a hard time in my brain justifying those numbers. But thank you.
There are no other comments. We're ready for the clerk to read them. I already closed the public hearing. All right, I'm ready for the clerk to read the motion.
Thank you. So tonight, the City Council will consider the addendum to the Blue Oaks Commerce Center initial study and mitigated negative declaration and adopt resolution number 23-023 denying the appeal from the September 22nd, 2022 approval by the Planning Commission, adopting the 2 findings of fact and approving the major project permit stage 1 modification, subject to 10 conditions of approval, and adopting the 2 findings of fact and approving the major project permit stage 2, subject to 93 conditions of approval. If I can get a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor with a second. We'll start our roll call with Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
Yes.
Councilmember Alvord.
Yes.
Councilmember Mendoza.
Yes.
Councilmember Rakucci.
Yes.
And Mayor Haudashelt.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you
Motion
very
passes unanimously.
We've reached that portion of our agenda where we'll have a second opportunity for public comment on non-agenda items. Now, I'll invite my colleagues to give any reports.
Staff?
No further reports, Mayor.
I have nothing, thank you.
I'm going to learn that. I got to go this way and this way. Now I'd invite my colleagues to give any reports on their activities, and we'll go from there.
You gonna go this way?
Councilwoman Rakucci.
All right. Well, I think there's been a lot of things that have happened in the last couple of weeks, and I'm just going to only hit on a couple of them. And they're just, all of them are a little bit different. 2 more meetings that I went to, just what had kind of happened at the meetings. I went to Placer County Flood Control and Conservation meeting that's held in Rockland. And it's really, it's not funny, but most of the time when I've been to these meetings, we've been in drought. And so we make gauges to see how our creeks are doing. And when I went to this meeting, this is after 2 heavy days of rain. And so we literally saw everything in action, how it could measure things so you can see what the upstream and the downstream effects are. You can also, talking about, got a FEMA grant to do some more mitigation in other areas that haven't had those impacts studied quite that much. It will be way far in the west, like West Placer County area, or even up in more Auburn-ish kind of areas. But it was one of those, yes, this is what we are, flood control and conservation mitigation at its best. I mean, when it was happening. So it was kind of neat when you knew how it worked, but to really see it happen, and besides talking about clearing the creeks and those kind of things, but those gauges work, and it really makes a difference for planning our safe environments in our region. And then one other thing, I went to a meeting for West Placer Solid Waste Authority, and this is the landfill, and it's just something that you don't always have. But one of the items was mattress companies got together and were looking at offering taking the mattresses away, disposal. And so that right now, WIFMA, they have like a special couple times a year where bring your mattress in for free. Well, now it'll be bring your mattress anytime free. For individuals, because they're saying they use a lot of the product, mainly steel and wood, but this will be an opportunity to not put it in the landfill, and encourage people, don't throw your mattress out in the field, and turn it in, and there's not a cost. And that's new. That's my 2 things.
Councilmember Mendoza.
All of my assigned council meetings don't have anything to report out. Thank you.
Great. Councilman Albert?
Welcome New Year. Hopefully 2023 will be a little bit slower pace. It seems like we've had crazy on both ends of the spectrum with COVID and stuff, so I'm hoping we get kind of a normal year and get to see what that's like. And on our consent calendar tonight, the council, we all voted for our new positions, our new boards and commission positions. So there's several changes, and if you're interested, I think those are listed online somewhere. So we'll have different things we'll be reporting, some of us.
Great. Vice Mayor Bernasconi.
I was going to say that, looking forward to the new committee assignments. You're going to be one busy mayor.
Oh, yeah.
I will see probably most of you tomorrow night at the Roseville Chamber installation dinner, and looks like they're going to do things a little bit differently tomorrow night. And then on Friday night, I will be in Sacramento to receive an award on behalf of the city as a friend of housing from the Building Industry Association at their installation dinner. So things are definitely ramping back up again.
Yeah, and, Vice Mayor Bernasconi, you counseled me that, the requests were going to come in, and I was like, yeah, I can handle that, right? Yeah, they're coming in. Thank you for the council, and they have substantially increased. And congratulations on your Friend of Housing Award, Councilman Albert. Councilman Mendoza had one of those conflicts earlier because he's our representative to LAFCO, and so he was there on behalf of the council.
We have a team to back you up, so don't forget that. You can't be everywhere, so.
Can't, and
The
I'm
rest of
glad.
us will help you.
I'm learning to delegate, so thank you very much for that. Earlier this evening, we also did some youth commissioner appointments under consent. One of those things that, I think it was last Wednesday, I spoke at the chamber luncheon and talked about our strategic plan values. One of the things I learned is don't put 10 pounds in a 5-pound sack. Should have just stayed focused on delivering exceptional services, and that would have gotten me 30 minutes. But, and Vice Mayor Bernasconi, to your point, staff provided a lot of contemporaneous storm updates on how many sandbags and what we did. And so, we've got a terrific team here. So, and then while I was there, I got an invitation, you're there and they invite you to something else. So the following day, I went to Pride's ribbon cutting for their youth employment services in Citrus Heights. And of course, Pride has been a long time Roseville business here. And then I had an opportunity to, anybody on the council do yoga? All right, I got to learn to do more yoga because I I went to the Festival of Harvest and they started off with some yoga, and I'm not as limber as I ever was. So anyway, and then Councilman Alvord and Councilwoman Bernasconi, Rakucci, and I participated along with a lot of our Roseville employees in the MLK Community Service Day in Rockland on Monday. So, yep, it's busy, and we're out there representing the city and getting some great feedback. So thank you all for yours, and thank you, Vice Mayor Bernasconi, for recognizing that, or reminding me that it's not all on me. So thank you. And unless there's anything else, we'll be adjourned to the February 1st meeting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I believe it's February, we're talking February.